So full out over again.
Full
I'm gonna
health.
start running as well.
Oh, for
Nope,
fuck's
no
sake.
movement.
Nope.
Pin.
Just pins. From base.
That's
It doesn't matter.
ridiculous.
I don't think
That's
anything
fine.
matters.
Well, get killed. No,
Yeah.
stay still.
No, I can't fight back. Devs, why have you allowed this?
It just had to be waiting.
Just instantly pinned.
Hey, YouTube. So, I told you guys when I did the Pounce the Pin video that if Pounce the Pin comes out and it's ridiculously broken, that I would talk about it. And I would offer suggestions for what I would do to fix the problem. The reason being that I would do this is because if Pounce the Pin does come out and it is broken, then I know that the community is going to react in quite a few ways. We know that with Dilo, I said, for example, and quite a few people agreed with me at the time, maybe more of them do now, that the issue with Dilo wasn't the hallucination timer or the envenomation timer, and it wasn't the damage of the hallucinations. The actual issue was interactivity with the Dilo. If the Dilo bites you once, and then the, timer goes away in 5 minutes, you don't interact with the Dilo ever, because he just appears once. Now, of course, shortening the envenomation timer does mean that the Dilo needs to interact with you more. It needs to interact with you every minute, right? But I had a different solution, which would actually be more suited to balance around packs of Dilos rather than the individual Dilo. And that was to make it so that to get back charges, you had to bite your opponent. After you used your first 3 charges, you had to go in and actually bite your opponent to get a charge back, meaning that you'd use your hallucinations more of a decoy rather than the actual damage dealing part of the kit. But of course they can do damage, right? We didn't do that. And I don't know how Dilo is doing right now, besides the fact that his hallucinations just don't bloody work. So, the same things will be happening with Pounce the Pin. And my fear is that we will turn Pounce the Pin from an interesting mechanic that just needs to be ironed out, and we will instead gut the mechanic, and it will just never be used by Raptors. Right? Which will then lead more into the, you could say, the self-serving Raptor story, which is that whenever Raptors get anything good, it gets nerfed because people just don't know how to deal with Raptors. Right? And I do agree. A lot of people don't really know how to properly deal with Raptors. But I also can't really blame them, because the game has never really expected them to ever deal with Raptors. You could always camp this, or go here, or you have a 7-second buck timer, and yada yada yada. There were always ways to deal with Raptors. It didn't really include learning how to fight Raptors positionally. In fact, just today, when I was actually testing out Pounce the Pin, I wish I was recording it properly, but we came across a really, really good dibble when I was playing with Nick, and he was very, very good at positional playing. Yes, he was between 2 rocks in Highlands, the small greyish, dark grey rocks, but he was playing really, really well positionally. And I thought that was very, very impressive. But I wanted to talk about what I would do for Pounce the Pin. Now, my initial theory when going into Pounce the Pin was that it was that they took my idea almost 1-to-1 and made the weight, 1% of the stamina equals 0.75% of your weight. To give you these numbers here, because when I was first practicing it, it felt like this. This is genuinely how it felt. It felt like, because I was fighting it as a Packy solo, and I managed to get it to waste a few of its rams, and then I was able to pin it. I went, okay, cool. I managed to pin the Packy. It must be this. So then what we did is a friend of the channel, Bird, grew a Packy on the same server that we were playing on, and I pounced him, and I pinned him immediately. Which means that Packy, despite weighing 50 kilograms more than the Raptor, gets pinned immediately. This is with full stamina, full health, as full as water and food as we could get. And even with my Raptor at half stamina, I still pinned it. Meaning that either A, Raptor's ability to pin is not tied to its weight, or with dinosaurs like Dino, and with Carno Charge, there is a small multiplier that affects into what you can knock down at certain stages of growth. So, for example, it could be 1.5 times, which will mean that Raptor's highest pin value would be 675. I wanted to see if we could then pin a Dilo, but we never really got around to that test. We didn't really think it was needed, because fundamentally after playing, Raptor's Pounce the Pin is kind of broken. It doesn't really do what you really want it to do, which is really, really sad. what I wanted was a strong ability that makes it so that the Raptor ambush is a really, really big threat. A coordinated Raptor ambush is a huge threat. And then it's up to you to try to mitigate that threat or play against it. So I came up with a bunch of different ideas of how we can try and fix what we currently have. Right, I'm going to write it on a little text box so you guys can see the text box as I'm going. So the first thing I'll do is simple. Make it simple. We're fairly sure that there is a health component in with Pounce to Pin, where the lower your health is, the easier you are to Pounce to Pin. All we care, there could also be a bleed component into Pounce to Pin. But here's the issue. Right? By doing all these variables that have to get lower and lower and lower, it makes it so that you end up using Pounce to Pin as a finishing move rather than a strong opener, which I would have thought is more interesting, in which it can be used as a finisher and an opener. The issue with making Pounce to Pin only really work against these larger creatures as a finisher, right, is that they could just bleed to death. You could have just bled them to death, you know? As we see here, by making stamina is equal to weight by 1 to 1, the Stego gets pinned at 37. With this here, actually, have I done this equation correctly? This number minus this number, done by that. Yeah. What we can now do, we can now change this number to, we can change this number here. Why can't I change this number? I guess it just don't matter. It just don't matter. We can change this number here instead, and we can go change this number to 60, and we get the 37 here. Boom. If we change this number to 45, for example, you get 16%, which will be the 75 value here, assuming that every single Raptor is pinned on. Right? Whereas if you take, I know I'm going kind of wibbly wobbly here. Whereas if you take an example of Raptor's weight is 0.5, you will not pin a Stego until it is at 0% stamina, which we can probably say is maybe a good thing, right? We can maybe say that that is actually a pretty good thing for you to be able to do. Now, what we can create now is a version of Pounce to Pin by also changing the way Buck works. That's right. We can create a Pounce to Pin that creates a new way to kill as Raptor, and we do this by changing bucking and stipulations. So, what stipulations would I say the devs should change to make Pounce to Pin a bit more manageable? 1. Don't allow a solo creature to Pounce to Pin. This means that if you want to kill the target through bleed, you just send in one Raptor at a time, and you won't activate Pounce to Pin. In fact, you can send up to 2 Raptors at a time for the dinosaurs that have 5 Pounce slots, and 2 Raptors for dinosaurs that have 3 Pounce slots. Why? Because I would suggest you need to fill in 66% of the dinosaur's Pounce slots, which is a very, very simple calculation. 66% of 3 is 2. If you have 2 Raptors on that target, you can activate Pounce to Pin. With Stego, 5 is 60% of 5 is 3. So 3 Raptors on a Stego can then start to initiate Pounce to Pin. As you see, the Stego needs to be at 0% stamina. This means that for the majority of the Stego fight, you will be having 5 Raptors on it. Right, but how can we get Pounce to Pin to trigger earlier if the failsafe is stamina? Right, what can we do? Well, what you could do is actually increase the amount of Pounce slots on a Stego, for example. Right, maybe when bigger dinosaurs and Stego comes out, there will be more Pounce slots on them, but also they will weigh more than Stego. We have to consider all of this. Right, so by making it 56%, you can now choose to bleed or rush the grapple. Let's just call it grapple. I remember Hypernova was saying that we should just call Pounce to Pin grapple because P2P already has different connotations put to it, like peer-to-peer, for example, which then could confuse certain things. So we'll call it grapple. Because of this, it means that a solo Packy is not just cucked versus a raptor. It also means that solo Packy is able to deal with 2 raptors, because it needs 2 raptors latched onto it. So all it really needs to do is defend against one of the raptors and break it, and the other one just has to fight it normally and cannot pin it. Same thing for Dilo. You can try and rush one of the raptors, and the other one won't be able to pin you. Same thing with Cerrado. You can try and rush one of the raptors. It also means that these dinosaurs are designed to be taken down with numbers equal to their pounce slots. So 3 for Galley, but Galley can always run away. Packy, 3 raptors, is equal to 1 Packy, as in the fight could go either way. Same thing with Dilo, the fight could go either way. Cerrado, the fight could go either way. 5 for Tenno, 5 for Kano, 5 for Sego. Now, when I say the fight could go either way, what I mean is that your target could run away, in which case you don't have the stamina to really initiate a pounce to pin properly. Because while you can pin them, it will be such a short pin, it won't really matter. Or the dinosaur could wipe out one of your group members, and now, while you can still pounce the pin, if another group member gets too weak, you won't be able to pounce the pin. So it really could go either way, right? Of course, really, really good players can, of course, kill these dinosaurs with bites, right? And we've seen it. We have seen people, very, very skilled players, much better players than me, who have killed all of these dinosaurs with bites, including Stegos. But we haven't really seen it since Stegos Power Swing because it's just come out. Give people time to work on the montages. I prefer these numbers to these numbers here. So here I actually calculated how much it would take for a solo raptor, assuming it worked the way that I thought it was going to work, which it doesn't because raptor can pounce a fully grown Packy, which isn't good. That's not a good thing at all. Right? Now for the pounce damage. When I went to kill the Packy, I'm fairly sure I got to around 66% stamina, and Bird was on like below yellow health. He was on like orange health, which effectively means it might actually take maybe all of your stamina to kill a Packy, in which case it would be very, very close to what I thought the damage was going to be, which would be the pin damage. But I actually think it's higher. I think the Packy maybe would have died at around 80% stamina, or maybe even more. I need to watch through the recording again and actually see. In fact, what I could actually try and do, YouTube videos, raw videos. I guess I can't open that. No. Okay, here you go. So we have Packy gets pinned. To kill the Packy with 2 raptors brings you down to... Come on, show me. Show me. Brings you down to about 40%. Yeah, so it's about 80%. Right? So if we take 80% is equal to 500%, so equal to 500, we can do equals 80 divided by 500, and then do equals this multiplied by 100. What? Shut up. Wrong way around. We do 500 divided by 80, and then we do this number now multiplied by 100. Yeah, we get a damage of 625, which might actually be what the pounce damage is. 625. We're not sure. We'd have to go into a testing server. That was just me just doing a bit of mental math. Sorry for how clunky that was. I'll probably cut that down in the final video. I just want to make this video quickly. So we have a stipulation. 66% of the slots need to be filled. For certain dinosaurs, this means that they have to be at 0% stamina. If 100% of the slots are filled, that's just having all the raptors. For example, Dibble, 35% stam. Stego, still 0. All of these dinosaurs, you just instantly pin them if you fill up every single slot. Right? So what can we do to give these dinosaurs a fighting chance? Well, I would say what you need to do is to change bucking. Right? fucking changes. And to explain this, I will switch over to a PowerPoint. Also, here's one last view of the incorrect data. But this is assuming 75%, which could work. As you see here, the 75% compared to 50% is a somehow 2% difference here. It's 2% less stamina. But on Dibble, you go. Because Dibble weighs less. Right. So actually, yeah, of course. Makes sense. So the difference here about 50, the difference here is about 20. Right? That's the difference. And 0% stamina here. For the Pinacano, 75%. Whereas with this, you need 50%. So there's the real difference there is 50. Right? If you make it 75%, you can pin them at 0. If you do it at 50%, pin them is 50. That's just 3. Okay, I have time to look at all my data currently. Here's my data. So here is a Stego, right? Stego has 5 pound slots. It has one here on both sides, one here on both sides, and one here. There is a secret pound slot right by the tail, where you can hit the very, very end of the tail and latch on. So there could be 7, but it's very, very hard to get. There could be 7, but achieving 7 is very, very buggy. So my idea is this: change bucking. What you give is the Raptor 2 modes when it's latched on: attacking and bracing. So after you click right mouse button to latch on to the Stego, you have to hold left mouse button to attack. And if you let go of left mouse button, you are bracing. If the Stego bucks when you are attacking, you are instantly flung off, and the Stego loses some stamina, and you lose a bigger chunk of stamina. Right? It doesn't have to be as insane as this. The devs, if they take this idea, can make these numbers whatever they want to do. Whereas if you are latched onto a Raptor and you start attacking, and then you stop attacking right as the Stego starts to buck, you will brace, and you will lose as much stamina as the Stego loses. Right? And if the Stego keeps bucking, it will drain its stamina, and you'll drain your stamina. Right? But you won't be doing any damage to the Stego. In fact, what I'd actually say is bracing makes you lose half the amount of stamina that you would lose normally. Right? There you go. That is better. So as the Stego starts to get to here, you will get to here, and yada, yada, yada. Right, so let's say, for example, the Stego loses 10%, you lose 20%. This will also mean that Stego won't be about. But then what I'll do is I then have, if you have multiple Raptors on, no, that causes issues. Yeah, I think that's fine. If you have multiple Raptors on, each Raptor is equally affected by the buck, and the Stego might be perfectly fine. But of course, these are just made up numbers. This is the idea. The idea is that if you are attacking while pouncing and the dinosaur bucks, you are instantly flung off. This is to give the dinosaur a chance to basically fight against Raptors that are all piling onto it. Meaning that when it comes to our strategy for Pounce to Pin, you could invent a new strategy which you could call bum rushing Pounce to Pin. Right? The idea is that you are constantly sending Raptors to pounce onto the target, so the target is bucking them away. Right? And then by bucking them away, the dinosaur needs to buck them away. So if they let all of the Raptors jump onto them, right, by just not bucking, one, they're going to take insane bleed damage by not bucking, because that Raptor just stays on. In which case, we have a very, very similar playstyle to what we have right now. And if they choose to buck, the Raptors could take advantage of this and then keep going. But of course, if the Raptors then choose to attack after they buck, they get flung off. And it'll be up to the Raptors to try to manage their stamina, to try and get the Stego lower and lower and lower and lower and lower and lower and lower until it reaches 0. And then they pin it. Right? You see? Whereas for other dinosaurs, there'll be different things. For example, Kano, 50%. Kano, 68%. Cerrado, 38%. It only has 3 slots. Right? And then for these dinosaurs, they're just instantly pinned if you get more and more Raptors on them. Right? But by giving this instant buck, it gives them a fighting chance. Then what you could do is that you could then nerf the way that the terrain affects these dinosaurs. So here is a tree. You can make it so that these dinosaurs don't get flung off by trees anymore. Why? Because you have the ability to instantly knock them off. With a change like this to stamina, you make it so that the defender has a very, very easy way of getting rid of Raptors. They just need to be careful of their stamina. If there are too many Raptors for them to handle, then eventually their stamina will just keep going down and down and down and down and down and down and down. Which is, it's up to them to try to pressure the Raptors. You see, for some players, they will die to Raptors even with this, they'll just get absolutely handled by Raptors. But against players that can try to manage the Raptors, they won't need to worry. And if you're a player who doesn't really know how to deal with Raptors, you can either A, experiment every time you play against Raptors, or B, avoid the Raptors. In the same way, for example, that I would give the advice, and this advice, I try not to make it sound condescending, because I don't mean to be condescending. But let's say, for example, you are in the plains. These are plains, right here, and there was a Kano off in the bush, and the Kano comes and ambushes you, and you are not very good at looking out for Kanos. The best advice I would give you is either A, learn how to dodge Kanos and play around them to escape into the safety of the forest, or B, stick to the safety of the forest, such that the Kanos will not see you in the plains. And there is no shame in that, right? There is no shame in having to run away from a fight. It doesn't take away from you. It doesn't take away from the player you're running away from. It doesn't do anything. It's a survival game. If you survived, you survived. This game doesn't have to be PvP. The reason why I focus so much on PvP in this game is because everyone in this community really likes PvP. So what happens is, because everyone really likes PvP, when they get destroyed by a mechanic that they cannot deal with, and the game has not given them proper tools for, they beg for that mechanic to get absolutely gutted. So they don't need to deal with it anymore. Right? And for carnivores, PvP is very, very important. That's how they actually get a lot of their food. Even an ambush, by extension, kind of is PvP. So you have to keep this in mind. You see, if players were more welcoming to the idea of rebalancing certain things and just trying to come up with a healthy middle ground, we could just do it. But I'm really worried that Raptor is just going to get gutted because people just don't know how to deal with it. So we can try and deal with that. Those are my main ideas. I'm trying to just get them across really, really quickly. You know, because I don't want this video to be too long. That's my idea. Whatever it is that allows a Raptor to pin a Paki, remove it. Just make it weight-based. Keep it simple. Make it weight-based. Give it a stamina requirement. And then make it so that every percentage of stamina is equal to a certain percentage of weight. You could go with 0.5, in which case, here are your numbers. Or you can go with 0.5, in which case, here are some of your numbers. For solo and a max pack. Right? And then you can work out 66% by literally just calculating the same thing we did here and working out 66%. You can do that. You can then take my buck idea, which means that you can then nerf the environment because they have a very, very strong buck, and it's up to the Raptors to play against the buck. Now, there would be Raptors. Now remember, in the same way that there are players who are like, but Pounce the Pin is too strong, we'll move it out the game, there will be Raptor players who will say, no, this bucking is too strong, remove it from the game. Well, I've spoken to quite a few Raptor mains. I've spoken to Nick and his group and talked to them about what they think about this idea. And he said that he thought it was a pretty good idea. That actually solves a lot of the problems. Because he agrees as well that Pounce the Pin right now is broken. But what we can do, we can work together to present an alternative solution. If everyone in the R community, if you guys like this idea, let the devs know. If you like the idea of a group of Raptors needing to be used to pin you, do that. If SG has this idea, allows for you to still use bleed strategies, because Pounce the Pin has a lot of weaknesses, and I will explain them. For one, if you are in a group, Pounce the Pin will actually get you killed, right? It will, because while you're pinning your target, the other dinosaur comes up and starts biting you, and the dismount for a pin is a lot longer than a normal dismount. For example, right now, even though I don't want Paki to be pinned by Raptors, but I had a fight where before I realized that I could actually just pin Pakis, I had a fight where I wasted an out Paki stam, and I pinned it. I didn't realize that there was a second Paki, and I got obliterated, right? I got my skull caved in. I died, right? I keep saying right. I'm so sorry. Well, let me just do that again. So, back before I knew that Paki could be pinned by Raptor, I tried wasting the Paki stam, and I managed to pin it. Then a second Paki came along, and it killed me. I had my skull caved in. I died. Just perfectly fine. That sort of stuff happens. That is why groups are very, very strong versus Raptors, because you can protect each other, right? If we make it so that certain dinosaurs can just be pinned in one, for example, at certain percentages, say for example you want to bleed out a Kano and it's below 50% stamina. Why do you want to bleed it out? Because it takes less stamina. In theory, right? You're not dumping as much stamina. If you kill the Kano, and you use your entire stamina bar to kill that Carno with your group, yeah, with like 3 of your Raptors jump on, you pin it, you kill it, you drain all your stamina, and then a Serrado shows up, you're going to die. That's another very, very big weakness, right? We can try and mitigate that. So there are things with the Pouncer Pin that aren't that great. By allowing us to control the Pouncer Pin, we can put more power into the players to choose what they want to do, as well as give reassurance to the players who are playing against Pouncer Pin that one Raptor can't just pin them down. So even a Stego at 0% stamina will not be pinned by one Raptor. You need 3, you see. So that's my idea. I just really want to avoid a situation where Pouncer Pin is destroyed. If you guys have any other ideas to add on to this idea, or if you have your own ideas, please let me know. I would like to reiterate an idea that if you want to make a Pouncer Pin that also is dependent on your target's health and their bleed, then what's the point of bleeding if I'm just going to Pouncer Pin? You see what I mean? Furthermore, this version of Pouncer Pin still allows you to do the ambush. Against these dinosaurs, these 3 dinosaurs here, you have a very, very clear ambush goal. If you ambush this dinosaur with 66%, you can pin them and kill them, right? But you can't do it solo. You see what I mean? So there's always that. That is about all I can really say. I hope that all makes sense. I hope I don't even need to talk about this again. And we'll see. Either ways, goodbye for now.